Facing the looming threat of the death penalty, Foolio's killers finally broke under pressure. According to reports, they showed remorse and issued an apology for their actions.
We shouldn't have did that. We shouldn't have traveled all the way to Jacksonville to Tampa to go kill Foolio.
But that was only the beginning. Under pressure, they revealed everything to investigators, detailing exactly how they planned and executed the shooting.
He puts out his arms like this, and it appears that he's brandishing a rifle.
And that's when things really took a wild turn. Right in the middle of it all, they dropped the name of a well-known rapper. That's when the case exploded. So let's break it all down. As the streets collided with the courtroom, the manhunt following Foolio's murder became one of the most aggressive in Florida's recent history. Law enforcement agencies statewide were working non-stop to track down everyone involved. And once the arrests started, it was like watching dominoes collapse one after the other. On July 27, 2024, 3 suspects, 21-year-old Isaiah Chance, 21-year-old Alicia Andrews, and 18-year-old Sean Gathite, were arrested in Jacksonville. But it didn't stop there. On July 29, 2024, 30-year-old Rashad Murphy was captured after a tense standoff. And finally, on January 6, 2025, after months of evading capture, 27-year-old Dave Murphy was arrested. That's when things took an even crazier turn. As each suspect sat down for interrogation, what they revealed left even hardened detectives stunned. And what went down in that room with Dave Murphy, you won't believe it. Let me paint you the full picture.
He puts out his arms like this, and it appears that he's brandishing a rifle with one hand extended and one, what I would consider the trigger finger. He starts walking around the interview room after he gets out of his seat, and this is after Detective Nieder and I left, and he's holding it like this in front of him, and then he starts going, boom, 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 boom. And then he walks around, and then he does it again. And he does it multiple times.
Y'all, this man really stood up in the interrogation room and started acting out how he shot Foolio, sound effects and all. The detectives had temporarily stepped out, but the cameras were still rolling, and he had no idea. He reenacted the entire murder like it was a movie scene. The streets couldn't believe it. People were calling it the most self-incriminating moment ever caught on tape. But things didn't stop there. When it came time to interrogate Isaiah, Chance police didn't hold back. They made their feelings about Foolio loud and clear, and what they said changed the entire tone of the investigation.
What do you know about Foolio? Let's start from there. I think he's a piece of... I watched all those videos. I went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we all did.
I mean, that Joker's desecrating graves. He is asking to be killed. There's no doubt about it.
It was inevitable.
I can't believe it took this many years for somebody to kill him. Honest to God.
Now, while that might come as a shock to some, it really shows just how deep this gang war ran and how even law enforcement understood the deadly game Foolio had been playing. The detectives weren't justifying the murder, but they were clearly aware of the violent world Foolio was involved in. As the case unfolded, the evidence stacked up fast. Investigators pulled surveillance footage, license plate reader data, and phone records to track down 2 key vehicles and connect them directly to the suspects. But here's where it gets even crazier. When they searched Sean Gathite's car, they found ammunition that matched shell casings from a shooting involving Foolio 2 years earlier. Let that sink in. This man had been riding around for 2 years with physical evidence tied to a previous attempt on Foolio's life. As one commentator put it, this wasn't just reckless, it was like carrying a smoking gun in your backseat, waiting to be caught.
To tell me that he couldn't even go clean his car.
So the rounds that he allegedly used to shoot Foolio 2 years before was still in his car.
Man,
so in 2 years, I guess he's never cleaned out the car because the rounds were still in.
The sheer level of carelessness these suspects showed was unreal. They acted like they were invincible, completely untouchably, and they left a trail of evidence everywhere they went. From surveillance footage to ballistic matches, it was as if they never thought they'd get caught. So when the arrests were finally announced, it marked a major breakthrough for law enforcement in both Tampa and Jacksonville. It wasn't just a win for the investigation, it was a statement that no matter how deep in the streets, was above the law.
All the victims, including the mother of Charles Jones, who traveled from Jacksonville this morning to be present for this announcement. Today, I stand before Tampa Police Major Pat Messmer, Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters, and Hillsborough State Attorney Susie Lopez to announce the arrest of 3 people in the deadly shooting of Charles Jones, also known by his stage name of Julio Foolio. In addition, we have warrants and are actively searching for 2 other individuals in this case.
All 5 suspects were hit with serious charge, first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, putting them at risk of life behind bars or even the death penalty. The level of coordination between them proved this wasn't some random act of violence. It was a calculated, premeditated hit. As investigators dug deeper, the roles of each suspect began to surface. Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews were identified as lookouts, tracking Foolio's movements throughout Tampa, including stops at Teasers, Gentlemen's Club, and Truth 18 nightclub. Meanwhile, Sean Gathite, Rashad Murphy, and Davon Murphy were believed to be the triggermen who carried out the shooting, but then came another bombshell. Investigators uncovered links that ran deeper than anyone expected. According to court documents, Jay Breezy, a rapper connected to the 1200 gang, allegedly sent a $390 Cash App payment to Isaiah Chance on June 22, 2024. That money was reportedly used to book an Airbnb that may have played a role in staging the murder plot. While Jay Breezy hasn't been charged, that transaction raised serious red flags. The suspect's gang ties painted a vivid picture of street warfare. Rashad Murphy was tied to a TK, while Isaiah Chance was affiliated with 1200. These weren't just criminals, they were frontline soldiers in a long-running turf war. To make things even more complicated, the surveillance footage prosecutors had in their hands was reportedly damaged, creating a potential hurdle in the case.
Surveillance video was critical in this investigation, as suspects were seen on video following Jones from location to location. This shows the lengths that these individuals were willing to go through and achieve that this murder would occur. At 4:15 in the morning, Jones began to head to a hotel on McKinley. One of the suspect vehicles is seen following the victim. However, instead of following them into a parking lot, they stage across the street.
The moment of the murder was caught on camera, and when prosecutors played that footage in court, it hit like a punch to the gut. The courtroom fell silent as the graphic reality of Foolio's final moments played out on screen, raw, undeniable, and deeply disturbing. It was a powerful piece of evidence that left a lasting impact on everyone watching.
This is at the hotel, and you can see the shooters are getting in position for their planned out murder. And they are shooting at Charles now, and you can see that he's the passenger in that car that's moving and trying to flee. And again, they're still shooting at him. He's the right front passenger in that vehicle.
The bond hearings for the suspects were nothing short of dramatic. Given the gravity of the charges and the threat these individuals posed to public safety, judges denied bond across the board. When Davon Murphy finally stood before the court in January 2025, the decision was immediate: no bond granted. But the most surprising moment came when details about the suspects' personal lives surfaced. Alicia Andrews disclosed she was pregnant, a revelation that shifted the tone of her case entirely. Suddenly, she became a key figure because being pregnant while facing murder charges inside a county jail brings unique pressures and can lead to unexpected cooperation with authorities. The investigation continued to peel back the layers of a meticulously planned operation. The conspiracy to murder Foolio stretched from June 21st to June 23rd, 2024, with suspects making the drive from Jacksonville to Tampa on June 22nd in two separate vehicles. This wasn't an impulsive act, it was a coordinated, military-style execution involving surveillance, communication, and logistics. Social media played a disturbing role too. Foolio had posted multiple times throughout the night, revealing his exact locations. Unknowingly, he gave his killers a digital trail to follow. In today's world, the internet doesn't just connect people, it can make them targets. The broader community felt the shockwaves. Sheriff T.K. Waters addressed the public directly, vowing that Florida would not tolerate this level of gang-fueled violence.
Closing, I want to directly speak to those who choose violence and those who embrace a culture that glorifies violence. Florida, Tampa, JSO, Jacksonville, Miami, wherever you are, will not tolerate foolishness, will not tolerate shootings and needless violence.
The prosecution was just as committed to making a statement. State Attorney Susie Lopez didn't mince words. She made it crystal clear that every individual connected to Foolio's murder would be held fully accountable. No one, she emphasized, would escape the consequences of their actions.
The feud stops here. All 5 of these defendants are facing life in the Florida State Prison, even the ones who didn't pull the trigger. In Florida, if you participate in the planning of a murder, you can be held accountable for the person's death. And that is what we intend to do here.
As the trial moved forward, one thing became painfully clear. The prosecution had built a crushing case against all 5 suspects. The evidence was airtight, the level of planning was undeniable, and multiple cameras captured the execution of the crime. These young individuals made choices that would shadow them forever. But to truly understand how they got here, we need to go back to the night everything changed. Let's set the scene. Jacksonville had been engulfed in a deadly gang war for over a decade, and at the heart of that chaos was Charles Andrew Jones III, known to the world as Foolio. He wasn't just another rapper chasing clout. Foolio was deeply embedded in the streets, a prominent member of the 6 Block gang, tied to the feared KTA network Kill Them All. And that name wasn't just for lyrics. Violence had always surrounded him. His father, Charles Andrew Jones, was murdered in a Jacksonville shooting back in 2011, setting off a brutal cycle of retaliation that would one day catch up to Foolio himself. Growing up in the Moncrief neighborhood, Foolio didn't just rap about street life, he lived it. His projects like Life of Me, Final Destination, and Resurrection weren't just music, they were raw, autobiographical street documentaries. The conflict that would eventually cost him his life began escalating in 2017 when his 18-year-old cousin, Zion Malik Brown, was gunned down. That loss intensified a war between Foolio's 6 Block and their rivals, ATK Ace's Top Killers and 1200 from the East Side. This wasn't some petty rap beef, it was bloodshed rooted in generations of violence. Foolio had survived multiple assassination attempts long before that final night. In July 2020, he was shot in Houston, Texas. Then again, in October 2023, he was hit in the foot while driving through Jacksonville. Still, he never backed down. He even claimed to have fired back in self-defense during the Houston shooting, always sticking to the street code he lived by. June 23, 2024, was supposed to be different. It was Foolio's 26th birthday, and he was in Tampa, ready to celebrate with his crew. But the streets had other plans. Around 4:40 a.m., after being asked to leave an Airbnb for exceeding the guest limit, Foolio and his entourage were ambushed. What happened next wasn't just tragic, it was terrifying. 3 gunmen opened fire. One had a pistol with a high-capacity magazine, and the other 2 were armed with rifles, equipped with brass, catcher's military-style precision. More than 30 rounds were fired in seconds. Foolio was killed, and 3 others were wounded in the hail of bullets, but somehow, they survived. And here's where things get even darker. This wasn't a random shooting or a heated argument gone wrong. Tampa police released surveillance footage showing the suspects trailing Foolio from one location to the next throughout the night. This was a cold, calculated, premeditated hit. These weren't just shooters, they were hunters, stalking their target. The driver of Foolio's car, one of the survivors, later gave a heart-wrenching account of those final moments. It wasn't just the end of Foolio's life, it was a brutal turning point in a war that had already taken too many lives.
Heard him take his lives, bro. We got to the hotel, he went in, checked in, and they told him that the rooms had already been taken. So he came back to the car. He was on his phone trying to find a hotel. I'm just on point watching everything. Looked down at my phone for like a split second. And then something just ain't feel right. So as soon as I look up, I just see shooters. I just kept telling him to duck. I ain't really hear him say really. Cause the gunfire was so loud. So it was just like, I ain't really hear him say nothing. I already knew when I stopped the car. Because he wasn't responding. I heard him take his lives, bro.
That testimony hit like a punch to the chest. Imagine sitting there, bullets flying, and hearing your closest homie take his final breath. The survivor's voice was filled with raw emotion, no filters, no tough act, just pure pain. It was a moment that reminded everyone just how real this situation was. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkhoff didn't sugarcoat it. He confirmed what the streets already knew. This was retaliation, a calculated hit carried out by members of ATK and 1200 as part of their ongoing war with 6 Block. And this wasn't about diss tracks or Instagram beef. This was a decade-long cycle of bloodshed that had already claimed dozens of lives. What followed was one of the most thorough investigations in recent Florida history. Law enforcement pulled together every possible piece of evidence: surveillance videos, cell tower pings, phone records, and ballistic reports. Court documents laid out a chilling picture, a coordinated plan routed in gang rivalry, supported by hard-proof rifle casings, digital footprints, and location data that tied the suspects directly to the crime. But here's the twist that shocked everyone: these weren't experienced criminals. They were young, reckless, and completely unprepared for what they were up against. Mistake after mistake led investigators right to them. One suspect even had shell casings in his vehicle from an earlier attempt on Foolio's life evidence he had been riding around with for 2 years. It was sloppiness that would prove fatal to their freedom. The public reaction was explosive. Social media lit up with tributes, outrage, and theories. One rumor that took off was that Foolio had faked his death, sparked by unusual activity on his Instagram after the shooting, but that theory was quickly shut down. His burial at Edgewood Cemetery on July 6, 2024, confirmed the truth: Foolio was gone. The loss shook the Jacksonville rap scene to its core. One fan summed it up best: "These suspects didn't just kill Foolio, they killed the whole drill movement in our city." The music that had brought national attention to Jacksonville was now stained by the real-life violence it often reflected. Law enforcement wasn't holding back either. Sheriff T.K. Waters and Chief Burkhoff sent a message, loud and clear. Tampa wasn't a place for gang beefs to play out. If you brought that drama to their city, you were going to feel the full force of the law. And while the investigation was still gaining steam, the streets were buzzing. Word was out arrests were coming. And when they finally did, the details were even crazier than anyone imagined. The suspects thought they had planned the perfect ambush. What they didn't know was that investigators had been tracking them every step of the way, watching their moves, recording their calls, and collecting every slip-up they made. This case wasn't just about justice for Foolio, it was a message to every gang member in the state. The days of handling beef with bullets were over, and Florida was ready to prove that with the harshest penalty available. The real shock came when the state filed motions seeking the death penalty for 3 of the suspects: Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, and Rashad Murphy. But Alicia Andrews, she was left out. That decision lit a fuse that would change everything. The threat of execution shattered the illusion of loyalty. The street code that once bound them together began to unravel. In the next chapter, as court proceedings heat up, we'll see just how quickly people fold when the weight of the death penalty starts pressing down. And the secrets that spill out won't just expose Foolio's murder, they'll unravel a much bigger story of gang warfare, betrayal, and the dark reality behind Jacksonville's underground rap scene.
The prosecuting attorney down there in Tampa, Florida, has filed a motion seeking the death penalty. Yeah. The death penalty. That boy Rashad Murphy, death penalty. Gathright, death penalty. What's the other boy named? Chance, Guttazay, death penalty. It's over with. The only person that's not getting the death penalty, the only person that the prosecuting attorney has hasn't filed a motion seeking the death penalty, and that's for Alicia.
So why wasn't Alicia Andrews facing the death penalty like the others? The answer lies in a mix of factors that would soon become key to how the entire case unraveled. First and foremost, it was revealed that Andrews was pregnant, a turning point. According to many familiar with how these cases play out, that one detail gave her a powerful incentive to flip, with a child on the way and her own future hanging in the balance. The pressure to cooperate with investigators became impossible to ignore, and in a case this high stakes, one cooperator could change everything.
When that girl came out and said she was pregnant, oh my dude. You in the county jail under a murder charge and you pregnant? Y'all, that right there gave her all the incentives in the world to say, hey, you know what? Look, I need to tell y'all the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
The pressure on Alicia Andrews was on a whole different level compared to the male suspects. She wasn't just fighting for her freedom, she was carrying a child. Victim advocate programs began reaching out. Her family was urging her to think about her future, and the harsh reality of possibly giving birth behind bars while staring down a life sentence was setting in fast. As one hood commentator put it, when you're pregnant, locked up, and facing life, the streets stop being loyal real quick. The emotional, physical, and psychological weight Andrews carried made her the most likely to break hand law enforcement knew it.
I don't understand how many victim advocate programs been contacting her, trying to talk to her and saying, hey, you know you got a baby, do you want to give your baby up for adoption? Hey, you got a baby, you need to think about your baby. You can't just go to jail like these guys right here. You got a child to think about. You got to raise the child.
But here's where things take a surprising turn. Andrews had already been talking, even if she didn't fully grasp just how damaging her words were. During early questioning, she made casual comments and gave details that seemed minor at the time, but prosecutors quickly realized they were gold. Without even knowing it, she had already started helping build the case, laying out timelines, confirming locations, and connecting the dots investigators needed.
See, now, one thing we got to realize is that she already done did some snitching, but you know, some of us, you know, you might just say, well, yeah, she might have did a little slip of the tongue, or she wasn't thinking right and all that. But when you break it all down, it's like she already done did the snitching, though. She already done put them at the scene of the murder.
Analysts believe that Andrews may not have fully grasped the seriousness of her situation early on, which led her to speak more openly with investigators than someone familiar with street codes normally would. From a legal standpoint, her cooperation was valuable, but from a street perspective, she was giving up too much, too soon. That unfiltered honesty, likely driven by fear and confusion, ended up playing a crucial role in strengthening the prosecution's case.
I think that she really understood the gravity of what was going on. And that's why when they sat her down to talk about what had happened, she had no problem with, just telling them the truth. Yeah, that's us. When they showed her the video footage, yeah, that's us right there. We driving past the hotel room. Yeah, that's us right there. We doing as we do.
We're doing that. But while the case against Foolio's killers was unfolding, the violence back in Jacksonville didn't slow down. In fact, it escalated. On January 24, 2025, the city was rocked by another heartbreaking tragedy when Brian Deuce Allen Jr. was shot and killed, and his cousin was critically injured. The shooting was directly tied to the ongoing feud between 6 Block and ATK. What's even more disturbing is that the motive behind the shooting was reportedly a rap song dissing 6 Block and referencing Foolio, proof that even after his death, Foolio's name was still being used to justify bloodshed. The cycle of retaliation wasn't stopping. Meanwhile, back in the county jail, things were shifting dramatically. The announcement that the state would be seeking the death penalty sent shockwaves through the cell blocks. The energy changed. Conversations changed. Trust started to break down. Suddenly, everyone facing charges started thinking twice about who they were really loyal to and who might flip first to save themselves.
Another thing we got to understand is this right here. Being that the prosecution is seeking the death penalty, they got bargain chips now. Yeah, all them other participants that's laying in the weeds, acting like they ain't did nothing and all that old type of stuff, they scared them. Right.
The mental toll on these young suspects was absolutely crushing. Many of them were barely in their 20s, yet they were suddenly staring down the possibility of spending the rest of their lives in prison or worse, facing execution. The weight of the charges, the constant isolation, and the looming threat of the death penalty created a pressure cooker environment inside the jail. Some began to panic, others grew paranoid, and cracks in their street loyalty started to show. For many, the reality of their situation didn't fully hit until the court proceedings began, and by then, it was too late to undo the choices they had made.
You just imagine, these is kids, y'all. These are 20-year-old boys. Can y'all imagine the mental mind state right now of all them boys that's sitting there right now think, damn, they want to kill us? Yeah, they seeking the death penalty.
The grim reality of possibly facing execution began to weigh heavily on the suspects. The bravado that once defined their street personas started to fade as the seriousness of their charges set in. As one street analyst bluntly put it, it's all fun and games until they start talking about the needle. That statement captured the shift perfectly. What once felt like a game of reputation and power had now become a fight for their lives. The death penalty wasn't just a threat. It was a real possibility, and it forced several suspects to reconsider their so-called loyalty. Whispers of cooperation, betrayal, and plea deals started circulating as survival instincts kicked in.
Different. It's way different. When you just facing a murder charge, you think to yourself, you know what? Dang, I gotta go through life. I can do my time, but at least I'm still alive. I can go see my family.
But death row is a whole different kind of nightmare. It's not just about being locked up, it's about waking up every day knowing the state wants you dead. Inmates there live in near total isolation, under constant surveillance, with the weight of finality pressing down on them. As one former inmate put it, you're not doing time, you're counting down to the end. For the young suspects in Foolio's case, that reality shattered any illusions they had about toughness or street loyalty. Facing death row stripped away the ego and exposed the raw fear underneath. This wasn't just jail anymore, it was life or death, and the pressure to flip, talk, and survive grew heavier with every passing day.
Still got life, but death row ain't like that. Totally different world. And not only that, they trying to kill you, so there's a difference.
The prosecution's game plan was crystal clear. Use the looming threat of the death penalty to crack these suspects wide open and expose the full scope of the conspiracy. They weren't just focused on convicting 5 people, they wanted the entire network dismantled, and with the mountain of evidence already stacked, it wasn't hard to see why. Surveillance footage, cell tower pings, damning text messages, and forensic proof painted a picture so airtight that legal experts were calling it a slam dunk case. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence came from Rashad Murphy himself, just hours after Foolio's murder. He texted, "I'm coming home, my thirst is quenched. Pop a bottle of Don Julio today, Murphy." It wasn't just was bragging. Andrews was expected to eventually testify in court, offering a full breakdown of how the hit went down. But this case wasn't just about her or the other 4 suspects. Investigators were digging deeper, probing the possible involvement of others, like the alleged $390 Cash App payment from rapper Jay Breezy to Isaiah Chance. That opened the door to bigger questions. Were more rappers or gang figures tied to this setup? Court dates were set Andrews in August 2025, with Gathright Chance, and Murphy scheduled for trial in April 2026. But behind the scenes, The talk was that it might never reach that point. Facing death row, some suspects might fold to save themselves. And in doing so, they'd burn the street code to the ground. This case sent a powerful message. The era of getting away with murder through silence was ending. And maybe the most sobering takeaway, even the ones who flipped wouldn't be walking away.
Snitches go to prison. Somebody better tell y'all something. Snitches don't just get out of jail and stuff like that. Unless, dealing with drugs and stuff like that. Yeah, you might get that because, somebody dealing with property, drugs, or you get caught with a gun, then you can say, let me go work for you and stuff like that. Then you might, but when you commit a crime against a person, murder, aggravated robbery and all that, you can do all the snitching you want. Your ass is still going to jail.
As this tragic story nears its final chapters, the ultimate fate of the 5 suspects still hangs in the balance. But one truth is undeniable: the decision to take Foolio's life has shattered their own futures and left a trail of pain that stretches through families, friends, and entire communities. The streets may operate by their own set of rules, but once those rules clash with the justice system, there's no street code that can protect you. The threat of the death penalty has flipped everything upside down. It's no longer just about loyalty or reputation, it's about survival. Will Alicia Andrews turn on her co-defendants? Will one of the male suspects crack under pressure and expose the deeper layers of the conspiracy? Will Foolio's family see real justice? These questions will unfold over the coming months and years. But the bigger message is already loud and clear. This case has rocked the hip-hop world, pulling back the curtain on the real-life destruction that comes from glamorizing street violence. Foolio's death and the arrests that followed are part of a larger, devastating cycle, one that's been swallowing up young lives across the country. Until that cycle is broken, more artists will die young, more families will grieve, and more futures will be lost to the illusion that violence earns respect. In truth, it only guarantees a prison cell or a casket. The choice is still out there. Walk away from the streets or become the next cautionary tale. For Foolio, the chance to choose came too late. For these suspects, the price of their choices is just starting to be paid. And for everyone watching, let this be a wake-up call. In the end, the streets never win. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the videos on your screen for more deep dives into the untold stories behind the headlines.